welcome to ICICI Direct. We're in an exclusive conversation with Mr. Daylynn Pinto, Senior Fund Manager, IDFC Mutual Fund, to talk to us about why investors should consider investing in the Multi-Cap Fund. Daylynn, thanks a ton for joining us today. It's been a bit of a roller coaster ride in the month of October. The markets have corrected 4%. Bank Nifty is down 3.5%. There's been a recent downgrade from Morgan Stanley as well. But the fact remains, our markets in the last year and a half have seen a very sharp up move. Largely, the mid and the small cap stocks have been outperformers. In your opinion, do you think it's a good time to invest in the multi-cap fund?
Yeah, so thanks for having me here, firstly. I think, multi-cap fund is really an all-weather product, right? We often pose a question to investors, can you guess in 2022, which segment would do better in the market? Would it be large, mid, or small? And I think your guess is as good as mine. And therefore, we believe that a product which offers, a sort of equal opportunity to all three asset classes over a long period of time does make sense for investors who otherwise are bogged down by having to decide, whether I go overweight large today or do I go overweight mid cap today or small cap, as the case may be. It also gives the portfolio manager, I think, an opportunity to think a little more long term in terms of his allocations, especially towards mid and small cap companies, which usually I would believe need a slightly longer time period, when taking an investment position. So while the markets, may have not corrected as much as we would like to, but I nevertheless do think that timing is a futile exercise, and I think time spent in the market is far more relevant and important.
Absolutely. Daylynn, there are lots of Me Too products in the market, and I want you to talk specifically about IDFC Multicap Fund. What makes this one from the IDFC stable so unique?
Yeah, that's a great question, and we've looked at some of the other funds out there. But I think from our perspective, I think there are really three issues that we believe our fund would provide investors. I think the first is we want investors to have as much diversity as possible, right? When I say diversity, I'm referring to two aspects here. One is you have a good access to large, mid, and small cap companies. And the second is, I think we want you to have as much diversity to the sectors that are represented by the underlying benchmark. So I think diversity is the first aspect. The second is discipline. And discipline from an investment strategy perspective, really means that we have overlaid some risk factors wherein we have capped our mid-cap allocation to 35% and our small cap allocation to 30%, despite the regulator actually allowing us to go up to 50% allocation in each of these segments. And I think the thought process here really is that you already have a product which at the very least will have a 50% allocation to mid and small cap. And therefore, our primary focus would actually be on how to maximize long-term growth potential from these two segments, while at the same time trying to help minimize the volatility that's usually associated with investing in mid and small caps. And the third aspect is really dependability. And that's really with regard to our stock selection process. I think we've been, fairly tight and fairly, bottom up in our approach of what kind of managements we would like to invest in, what kind of balance sheets we would like to invest in, and what are some of the key parameters that we internally believe are a recipe for long-term success. So I think these are three areas where we do differentiate ourselves from some of the other, multi-cap funds out there.
Right. Daylynn, of course, you talked to us about the sectoral caps that the multi-cap fund has. In terms of sector preferences, are there any?
So what we plan to do internally is that we do not want to have a very large overweight or underweight on a particular sector. And the reason for that is really to provide the diversity that I was talking about, that we have a good amount of exposure to a wide variety of sectors in the index. Where we would like to be very active is really on stock selection. I think that's an area we want to be far more active rather than being very, very active on sector selection. And again, this comes back to the risk reward perspective of the fund, where a product where you already have a minimum 50% allocation to mid and small. I think you need to look at the other associated risks that come with investing in such a product. And therefore, we are trying to minimize some of those risks to the largest extent possible in our minds. So I think sector benchmark, plus minus a few percentage points, but active stock selection is far more critical and relevant to our strategy.
Right. Daylynn, so you've got to advise our viewers now, right? How should one go about allocating to the IDFC Multi Cap Fund then?
Yeah, so that's a great question. We've done some analysis on, whether you come in one time or you come in through an SIP. But I think personally, for me, I think our view is really that even if you do come with a one time, the markets will always give us an opportunity to average out at a lower rate, right? I mean, corrections are a very inherent part of the market, and it's something that we should embrace rather than fear. And therefore, I do believe that if you come in with a one time in the initial, launch of the fund, you must, and I stress that you must also have a sort of SIP or an STP plan, so as to capture the benefits that market corrections have to offer. And lastly, I would like to reiterate that this is a fund where you have to come in with a long-term horizon, right? I would prefer a horizon of 5-year plus, and therefore an SIP, STP, would be the preferred route in that sense to allocate capital to this particular product.
Right. When you talk about SIP, I mean, I completely agree. The only way to create wealth and beat volatility is to do this in a staggered manner. But there's so much of talk about a correction around the corner, right, Daylynn? If we do see that over the next couple of months, do you advise investors to accelerate their investments or accelerate their SIP?
Absolutely. I think that's where we've all made our mistakes in the past. Not so long ago, 2018, 2019 was a terrible time for mid and small cap investing. And I think investors who stayed disciplined, who continued, to grind it out there, continue the SIPs rather than stop those SIPs, I think are the ones who are, sitting pretty right now, right? So I think it's definitely a good idea to either top up if you have the skill set to do that. And if you don't, go with an SIP. I think it's a no-brainer strategy in a market correction phase.
Also, in terms of allocation, right? What sort of percentage should one look at in their equity piece to the multi-cap strategy by IDFC?
Yeah. So in our case, I think we're very clear that we're going to have a minimum 30% allocation at all times towards large cap.
Okay.
And a minimum 25 to 35% in mid cap, and a minimum 25 to 30 in small cap. So we put an upper limit on the mid and small caps, as you've noticed, as I said earlier, but not on the large cap portion. We also have, a 20% allocation that we have kept for any tactical opportunities that could arise. There are 2 or 3 aspects we've thought about here. One is, in bear markets, would we like to take a tactical cash call? That's an opportunity that we have, but we've capped it at 10%. We also have an opportunity to invest in international markets, also capped at 10%. And lastly, we have an opportunity to look at certain momentum trades or certain IPOs that come through. The IPO market is fairly robust at this point of time. So we've kept some of these allocations to be looked at from a tactical perspective, but the core of the fund, of course, is as explained already. Yeah.
And very lastly, Daylynn, summarize the key features of this fund for us.
So our fund is really 3D power, as I mentioned. It offers investors diversity, a very disciplined approach to asset allocation, and thirdly, a very, very dependable stock selection approach. So we're going to be a very, wide market cap allocator. We're going to be a wide sector allocator. We're going to be a very active stock allocator, right? And all this within the framework of discipline. And our portfolio will be rebalanced every quarter so as to maintain this discipline that I've talked about, towards the large, mid, and small cap allocations.
Right. With that, it's all the time we have on the show. But just before we wrap up, Daylynn, anything else that you want to bring up or cover that we already haven't talked about?
No, not really. But I think, just from a very general comment, and I think goes back to our conversation earlier, markets have corrected 4 or 5% from the peak. Having said that, it's quite a mug's game to really figure out whether the market goes down another 5 or 10% from here. But I think every drop, as we've seen in the past, is a very good opportunity. And people who have, stayed disciplined have actually, been the beneficiaries of that, being greedy when everyone is fearful as such, right? So I think, this is a good opportunity. This correction offers us an opportunity to start to think about long-term allocations. And I think our IDFC Multicap Fund is very well placed to actually hopefully give you some good long-term returns in the future.
Right. Thanks a ton, Daylynn, for joining us on the show. That's everything you need to know about the IDFC Multi Cap Fund and why this one is a unique offering from the IDFC stable. Thanks for watching.